Huge, enormous, mega, massive, whatever adjective you want to put on it. It will be fun, exciting, and hopefully down to the wire because we're expecting a whole lot out of this one. Washington, Oregon, they're both undefeated. And you know what? On top of that, they don't like each other. Got Spencer McLaughlin here from Locked On Pac-12, Locked On Ducks to help us break it all down. Spencer, how you doing tonight?
I'm ready for Saturday. That's all I can say about my current mood. No matter what I do this week, whether it's golfing, work, watching TV, all I'm thinking about is, are we to Saturday afternoon yet? Can't wait for it. Going to be a big game. I know you hope that it's close, Mark. On a personal level, I don't, but only in one direction, of course. But I don't anticipate that.
This is so big and so important to you, it's even taking you somewhat off of your golf game.
Well, the interesting thing is I've actually, just playing casually, played well this week, but I still have the game like running through my head. Usually when I go out on the course, I'm trying to just dial in and just be present there, not look at my phone, not answering calls, not looking at Twitter, nothing. And it's just the golf course. And I get very process oriented out there. But like this week, as I'm out there, like once every 3 holes, I'll be dialed in, and all of a sudden I'll be like, man, what if Bo Nix throws an interception in the red zone? Is that just going to be a killer or something? Or like, man, what if we sack Michael Penix 5 times? Is that enough to win the game? What's the number there? I've just been having those thoughts all week. I can't wait.
Okay. Well, you are a sick man, but we already knew that, Spencer, but we love
Yes.
you.
Yes, we
Appreciate
did.
you being here, of course. So, all right, I'm going to set it up this way. I'm going to leave it wide open in this regard. I have not seen Washington really snap the ball live. Now, I've went back and looked at some highlights, and of course, they have been amazing. They're number 1 in the nation in points, number 1 in the nation in yards per play, yards per game, total offense, all that business that they were last year. All right, they're trampling teams for the most part, although they went to the desert, of course, their most recent game, and ran into a game Wildcat team that looked like a black mark on their record until Arizona showed up against USC and played a pretty damn good ball game as well. Oregon, I saw them play most of the game against Texas Tech, saw the first half against Colorado, and there was no reason for me to watch the second half. So I'm a little more familiar in regards to the eyeball test on Oregon, but I know the personnel in Washington, of course, brings back so much from what they had last year. These teams are so similar. Find differences for me in regards to whether that's just style or its strengths and weaknesses.
I think you have to start with style. Oregon is certainly not shy about throwing the football. Washington is not shy about the fact that they don't care if they can do anything except throw the football. And, Dylan Johnson, when he gets the ball, he's a good back. I mean, he breaks tackles, he runs hard, he's physical, got good speed. I like what I see from him quite a bit if I'm a Washington fan. Of course, I am not, but they are not a team that is going to come out. And Arizona was, I think, the game where they had to be the most balanced, where the passing offense wasn't quite what they're accustomed to having it be. I think Penix still went for over 300, which is below his season average, by the way. So that's just the standard that Washington has set offensively this season. But they're a team that wants to throw it first, second, and third and run it fourth in terms of priorities. Oregon wants to do whatever works. That's been the offense under Dan Lanning, who is not an offensive coordinator, of course, but I've always pushed back on the notion that, someone's a defensive head coach or someone's an offensive head coach, so that coach has no input on the other side of the ball. Like, no, he's got input. Like, Oregon has a new offensive coordinator this year. There are some things that are different. A lot of things are the same. There are specific plays, concepts, formations, packages and personnel that are the same because Dan Lanning likes them and such. So when you look at this Oregon offense over the last couple of years, they will do whatever they need to in order to move the football. So look at the game against Texas Tech, for instance. Oregon did not run the football well. Only about 3.5 yards a carry, which is low for them compared to what they've done in the last couple of seasons. And they only totaled 113 yards on the ground total. So what did they do? They said, hey, Bo, we need you to throw the ball a lot. Bo Nix threw the ball a lot. Bo Nix had a lot of success throwing the football. Same thing last year against Washington State. They ran the ball well in that football game up in Pullman, but they got behind, so they needed Bo Nix to carry them on his right arm, which he did. And then you look at other games Like the Washington game a season ago, for instance, Bo Nix played well, but Oregon ran for over 300 yards because they were having a lot of success. So they're a team that I think has got, a fastball and an off speed, whereas Washington really just has the fastball. Like, I can't sit here and say I can see a world in which Washington runs for over 200 yards in this game. I don't know if they'll go over 150 in this game because they won't give the running backs enough of a chance, and they don't need to because the receivers and their quarterback are their best players. So, and if, by the way, if Washington goes for over 200 yards on the ground in this game, Oregon's toast. There's no way that they win if that's the case. But I don't suspect that will happen. So I think that's the thing stylistically is Washington is going to throw, then they're going to throw, then they'll maybe run, but then they're going to throw some more. And then Oregon is going to say, okay, we want to run the football, but if you take that away, we are happy to throw it. We just like running the ball and having more of a balance. I think that's the biggest difference between these two teams is how they view offense and how they want to move the football.
So Washington sounds like Aroldis Chapman in his prime. Like I throw it 105, 106, you just can't catch up to it.
Yeah, and I'll throw a slider once every 10 pitches just to make you think about it. But guess what? 104 miles an hour is really hard to hit.
Yeah, so is Oregon, for as much as they brought back from last season and the numbers are similar, are they utilizing Bo Nix different, doing different things with him, making him more of a pocket passer, it seems, this season?
I wouldn't say making him more of a pocket passer. I think not asking him to run in design fashion, but for a select few moments in the game. So design quarterback runs this year have only really been seen from Bo Nix on a 3rd and 11 at Texas Tech in what was 4-down territory. Bo Nix picked it up on the ground anyway, and a 3rd and 5 at Stanford. You're not going to see a lot of 1st and 10, 2nd and 4 Bo Nix designed runs. He'll get outside the pocket. If he's got room, he'll take off and run. Of course, he's a tremendously mobile and athletic quarterback, and he's very good at it. And he does a good job of not taking hits as well when he takes off to run. But what Will Stein has really introduced compared to Kenny Dillingham last year is instead of an extra blocker and the quarterback run as a component of the ground attack that Oregon brings, they introduced the RPO, whether that's with a wide receiver or a tight end into the flat. They have that same sort of concept that a lot of people run in college football, which is you have that mesh handoff, but then you run a tight end or a receiver across in kind of a split zone action, whether from, an H-back spot or a guy in the backfield, with 3 guys behind center. You run that guy into the flat, and that's kind of the other option, and it negates the quarterback needing to run. Now, the quarterback still can run, right? It's essentially the modern-day triple option, but the two most used options in that concept, at least in what Oregon has done this year, but I think for other college football teams across the country, like USC, for instance, has been you're either giving it to the running back or you are going to throw it to the guy in the flat. And it just negates the need for the running back or for the quarterback to be in harm's way running the football quite as often. He still can. But if he's pulling that ball out of the running back's stomach, it's usually because he's got a receiver like Troy Franklin or Tez Johnson or Gary Bryant or Trayshawn Holden in the flat or a tight end like Terrence Ferguson, rather than Bo Nix is pulling out so that he can run himself. I think that's been kind of the wrinkle that we've seen from a year ago. So it's not, making Bo Nix a pocket passer, because he is not the same sort of guy as Michael Penix, but it is playing to his strengths, which is his mobility and quick release.
And so then on the flip side, my thought is these teams played an epic game, 38-35, I believe was the final score.
37-34.
37-34. Thank you for the correction. Bo Nix tripped up, hobbled up, taken out of a series late in that game, which proved possibly decisive. And so now we have an Oregon team that, based on my observation, you fill in the blanks, certainly, and correct me, better in the secondary, more consistent pass rush that might be more capable of slowing down the Huskies.
More consistent and just better. They have already matched their sack total from a season ago, and we're not even halfway through the regular season. And Oregon's got hopefully a Pac-12 championship game and one bowl game to go in this season, hopefully a big one. But they had 18 sacks all of last year, 18 through the first 5 weeks. Now you might say, well, yeah, they played Portland State. They had no sacks against Portland State. Well, they played Colorado and they played Stanford, and They played those teams last year too. They went to Colorado, who wasn't any good. They played Stanford at home and had a few sacks there. This is just a better Oregon pass rush. How good they are is what we'll find out on Saturday, because this is a good Washington offensive line. I don't think they're exceptional in run blocking, but in pass protection, they're quite good, because Michael Penix has to be protected in order to succeed. And every quarterback does at some level. He's just not a guy that, because of the surgeries and injuries that he's had, is a dynamic athlete. I don't think he was ever, known as a dual threat quarterback to begin with. He's mobile, he can move, but you're not going to have design runs. You can move the pocket, but he's not, going to outrun a blitzing linebacker or a safety or anybody like that. He's evasive, kind of shifty in the pocket, just not someone who you feel is going to do a lot of damage outside the pocket the way that Bo Nix can. Penix is a guy who will just slice and dice you from the pocket, and he has to have a good offensive line, and he's had that at Washington each of the last 2 seasons now. And this is going to be a test for Oregon's defensive front that is improved, that is being more productive, that is deeper, faster, and more talented at the top end. But they are getting a real test here against a good Huskies offensive line.
Spencer, who's playing really good football on this team, either side of the ball, that people may not necessarily be aware of, that they will see for the first time on Saturday?
Well, the Washington transfer, Taki Taimani, is having an outstanding season. I thought he was solid last year for the Ducks. Nothing special, nothing bad. He's just a solid Power 5 starter. He has upped his game in a big, big way. The PFF numbers reflect that, but really just the eyeball test. You watch him, and he's made a lot of impact plays this year, and he just didn't make as many a season ago. He's playing at a high level. And then Brandon Dorlus is a guy that a lot of Pac-12 fans already know the name of. He's a preseason all-first team lineman. He's probably going to be first team by the time the season comes to a close. He lines up inside and outside. His footwork and hand movement is exceptional, and he is Oregon's best pass rusher, at least from the interior. I think it's either Jordan Birch or maybe Mateo Uyunglele, but probably Jordan Birch on the edge, and that's where Birch is primarily lined up. They have done a really good job of keeping the defensive line fresh. Jeff Schwartz, who's a former Oregon offensive lineman, had a tweet about this, and I forget the exact numbers, but he was looking at the snap count of the Oregon defensive linemen, both interior and on the edge, and what it showed is that Oregon is rotating guys at a really high clip, like Birch and Dorlus and Casey Rogers and Taki Taimani and Popo Amavai. Those are the leaders in total snaps this year. But the guys that are behind them on the depth chart are playing a number of snaps per game that is really, really close to what those starters are playing. So I think that is by design, both in the way they built this roster the offseason with the portal and from the high school ranks. They have 3 true freshmen who will play at defensive end / edge, whatever you want to call it, on Saturday against Washington. Blake Purchase, Mateo Uyunglele, and Tatum Tuioti all have been productive this year, but they're keeping guys fresh because they have the depth to rotate at a high level and not have any production drop off. And I think that's been really, really key for their defense this season.
Spencer McLaughlin's here. Locked on Ducks, Locked on Pac-12. Please join him right there. You see the Twitter handle where you can follow Spencer's work all over the Pac-12. Spencer, the stars must be aligning in college football, because last week we had an Oklahoma-Texas game that won't be the last in the series. They will continue to play, but in the SEC, final in the Big 12, and 2 undefeated teams. Epic game, great spectacle, great for college football. Not great for the Big 12, because they probably were caught in conflict of, do we push this game or not push this game?
Well, they also have the issue of the Big 12 stinks after those 2 teams right now, and those issue. 2 are going to have a rematch in the Big 12 title game.
Yes, they most likely will. It would be a huge upset if that did not occur. But I think even more so that they are in conflict, because how do we push a game as our marquee game when they're not going to be around next year? A little bit different of a scenario. Again, like Texas, Oklahoma, this series will continue. It'll be under the Big Ten banner, but there will no longer be a Pac-12. This is the last time in the Pac-12, and this is the farewell tour for everyone to a certain extent across the Pac-12. And I think this series and this rivalry gets underrated nationally. There is true angst, and however you want to term it from a sports standpoint, hate between these
Animosity,
animosity.
disdain.
When I say hate, I mean sports hate. I don't mean, although I'm sure it's out there as
I was
well.
gonna say, I mean,
Real thing.
there are some
Yes,
fans. I'm not
unfortunately.
saying I condone this, but like there are some fans on either side of this that definitely are like, no, I hate X school and everything about them all the time, for and always. Like that's what it is, but that's what a rivalry is, right?
So when I say the stars align, it would still be cool if they were both 3-3 or whatever. It'd still be kind of historic, but there's so much on the line, and it is historically what it is.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up Red River because I've talked about this a little bit this week on my show and writing over at 750thegame.com. It's basically the same matchup. I mean, across the board. You have bitter rivals who are going to a bigger conference next year. They're two of the biggest television draws, if not the two biggest draws. Texas and Oklahoma more so in the Big 12 than Oregon and Washington in the pack because you have USC in there. But they're big television draws for their current conference. They are both highly ranked. They are both undefeated. And the loser is not throwing their hands up and saying, well, the season's over if they lose this game, because it's not the case. Texas can still make the playoff. They can't lose again. We know that. It's a tougher path to get to the Big 12 title game, tougher path to get to the college football playoff. It doesn't, however, ultimately become extinguished. I think the element of this game that makes it more interesting from a national standpoint is you have two Heisman capable quarterbacks who are top 5 in the betting markets right now for winning college football's most prestigious award in 2023. And you have to imagine, Mark, the winner gets a bump. I mean, that's always how it goes. It goes to the best individual play. Well, it's supposed to go to the best individual player. It doesn't all the time. Looking at you, Christian McCaffrey in 2015, Heisman
Yes.
Trophy winner in my book. But
I'm right there
when
with
you look at, what has always helped determine success in the Heisman voting, yeah, you got to have a great team. You almost all like the exception I think is Lamar Jackson in 2000 and what was that, 17, 16?
16, RG3.
Yeah, RG3. Like there are a couple exceptions, but your numbers have to be so unbelievably good, and your production, and you still have to be on a good team. By the way, you can't be on like a 6-6 team. But when you are the quarterback and the face of a team that is 11-1, 12-1, going to the college football playoff, yeah, you get a really good shot to win the Heisman. You really do. And if Oregon doesn't make the college football playoff, Bo Nix will not win the Heisman. Penix could win it if Washington doesn't make the playoff. But if Washington goes 10-2 and misses the Pac-12 title game again, his Heisman campaign is going to take a hit. So you put all those things together, it's almost a mirror image. Other than, Red River is a neutral site. This game is being played at Seattle. So other than that, it is entirely reflective of what we saw last week in the Red River shootout. And this is just, I think, going to be equally as entertaining of a football game.
Spencer, you've taken us to another level outside this game and this rivalry to the Pac-12. So I'll ask you this. Even though the season is roughly half over, the importance of the games are still ahead of us. There have been very few, although they have started to hit the data points in the last couple of weeks. UCLA, Washington State, a good example. Last week, Utah and Washington State a couple weeks earlier, or Utah and Oregon State a couple weeks earlier. So even though the bulk of the important games are still in front of us, have you seen anything USC struggling against inferior foes in recent weeks that has started to make you feel better about certain teams and less about other contenders?
Well, I think right now, if you power rated the Pac-12, and I did so earlier this week on my podcast, Oregon and Washington would be 1 and 2. I have Washington 1 and Oregon 2. And then I think there's a gap before you go to number 3. I'm not saying a big gap, but it feels like at this point in time, Oregon and Washington are in a class of their own. I mean, Washington didn't play its best game. Wasn't like really scared against Arizona. They were, a fumble away from going up 21 late in the game, but then they fumbled and then they weren't able to get a stop or 2 stops defensively, and Arizona made it a 1-score game to their credit, but that game wasn't quite as close as the final score indicated. Oregon's game against Texas Tech was very close, but what those games have in common that impresses me about both is I don't think either team played their best football. In fact, I know Oregon played horrendously against Texas Tech and still ended up winning the football game. Washington did not play their best game of the season, still ended up beating a good Arizona team. Both those games on the road against solid, not great, but solid Power 5 teams. Texas Tech 3-3, Arizona 3-3. Both end up with a one-score win without playing their best game in a hostile environment. So I think that those games are like the only blemish on the resume so far. You look at what Oregon did to Colorado, and after Friday against Stanford, Colorado is probably going to be a 5-2 football team with a close game against USC and a win on the road against TCU. And you look at what Oregon did to them, and it's like, well, it's hard to not kind of block out the negatives you saw against Texas Tech when you see them play against Colorado like that. However, the caveat is, and what is worrying me as an Oregon fan, is their 2 games on the road, Oregon has started slow. They did not get past the 50 on their first drive against Texas Tech, and they did not score a touchdown until midway through the second quarter against Stanford. So their 2 road games this year haven't gotten off to good starts, and I don't know if you can afford that against a Washington team that, against an improved Oregon defense is going to score points. You're not going to hold Washington to 10, 13, 17 points. I mean, holding them to 24 would be awesome. It would be a fantastic effort, and I tell you, Oregon probably wins that game 9.9 times out of 10 if they hold Washington to under 27 points or somewhere in that range. I think anything under 30 would be a good performance defensively because Washington is just so darn talented on the perimeter and at the quarterback position. But I think for both of these teams, they are the cream of the crop in the pack right now, and whoever wins is certainly going to be the number 1 power rated team in the conference. And, by any measure, there's no objective metric, but it'd be hard to not see it that way given USC struggles. But I still look at this conference and say the cannibalization is a coming. It's right around the corner, Mark. We are in eat your own season. That's what October is for the Pac-12. It is the season to eat your own, and then November is when you pick up the scraps, right? That's when Washington has to play Oregon State, and Oregon has to play Oregon State, and they have to play USC, and USC's got to play Washington, and USC's got to play Utah, and you just keep going round and round and round, and Oregon State and Washington play late in the year. That feels inevitable because I think these are 2 really good teams, Oregon and Washington, deserving of their top 10 rankings, number 7 and 8 in the country. Don't know yet, and we will know more on Saturday if any of them can get through the conference slate unscathed, which has never happened in the Pac-12. It's never happened. The Pac-12 was formed. Pac-12. Okay. Pac-12. Yeah. Just to be clear, because USC went unbeaten. Oregon did it in 2010. But when the Pac-12 was formed in 2011, nobody's gone 9-0 because it's really hard to do. And I just don't see how in a conference that is deeper than any other in the country, that's suddenly going to happen. As good as Oregon and Washington can be, I struggle to see it. I thought that before the season, and at this point right now, going into week 7, I feel the same way.
I don't know that it's the deepest top to bottom. The deepest top half, I would agree with.
Well, who's deeper top to bottom?
The SEC.
No way. The SEC's awful.
No, the SEC is deeper than the Pac-12 top.
No, that's ridiculous.
There's no Stanford in the SEC. No Stanford, Cal.
Whoa. Hold on.
Those teams are awful.
Hold on, Mark. I agree that Stanford is awful. Cal is not awful. They're just not good.
Okay.
Cal, who by the way should have beaten an SEC team in Auburn, but let's overlook that.
State's awful.
Let's overlook that for a moment. The SEC has Vanderbilt in it. So let's not pretend there isn't a doormat in every conference. It happens every single year. But explain to me right now why LSU, outside of SEC bias, is inside the top 25 right now. There's no world in which they should be.
I'm not going to explain what other people vote on. That's not my role. My role is, in this conversation, to compare 2 conferences.
But the Pac-12's got 7 teams inside the top 20 right now.
Yeah.
Nobody else can say that.
those are generally morons voting. I hate to say it, but they are generally. I will stop short of saying that. I will say that outside of covering their own teams, they don't know what they're doing. So there are a litany of examples that the AP voters don't know what they're doing. That's why I've started my own top 25 to basically say they don't know what the hell they're doing. There's an example of it almost every week. So I don't care who's ranked and who's not ranked. That doesn't really sway my opinion of conference uh, standings, because there's all sorts of teams. Why do the rankings magically stop at 25? That's stupid in and of itself. Why is the number 26 team, they're ranked just as much as everybody else is ranked, right?
I mean, we're getting into a larger discussion about the AP poll
Yes.
and the merits of it. I don't find 25 to be an inappropriate another number one way or the other. If you wanted to shorten it to 20,
It's a random number.
go ahead. I mean, to some extent, yes. I mean, it's a clean, easy number
Yeah, it
for
used to be
starters.
20. It could be
But
25.
it's also a threshold that you have to get into when you figure that there are, 120, what is it, 126
133.
133 FBS programs. If you are inside the top 25, you're saying that you're better than over 100 other football teams. And you have to have some way to get a discrepancy between who we perceive as good and who we perceive as not as good in a world where you don't have equal footing at every single school, where you don't have equal schedules at every school and strength of schedules, and where you just have that many teams. Because like in the NFL, it is exactly what your record is, right? If you're 4-1 team, you're a good team, and we know that. If you're 3-1, look, you might be due for falling back down, but like there are only 30 teams to look at, so doing a ranking is moot. But in college sports, I think that it is valuable and also makes the sport unique and really, really fun. But I mean, if you just look to the top 25 or even just look to the conference right now, you could say the best overall team is Georgia. I'll agree with you there. But in no world would I say the best conference is right now is the SEC.
Yeah, I didn't say that the SEC was the best conference. I said that it was deeper top to bottom. I said that
I don't
the
think that's true either.
Pac-12 was a better conference, at least, and it would not surprise me if the postseason would prove us otherwise. But as it stands right now, the Pac-12 appears to be the best conference, the first 5 or 6 spots. In terms of the contenders, it will be the best race. It will produce the most exciting games and results, because it has more better teams. I would take the top 3 in the Big Ten over the top 3 in the Pac-12, but I'll go 5 or 6 deep in the Pac-12 any day, and maybe even to 7. Arizona's 3 losses. When you mention Arizona's sitting at 3-3, they lost to Mississippi State on, unfortunately, what I was watching the game was a questionable measurement on a 4th down that negated the opportunity for them to continue in overtime. They lost to USC in overtime. They lost a tough, decent game against Washington, in which they weren't necessarily threatening to win, but they stayed in the game and were close. So they're a pretty good football team. Again, I could go on and on. I won't go into the issue with the rankings, because basically the process that determines the top 25 is the same process that determines all those others receiving votes. They are actually ranked as well. They just decide, the networks and whomever's printing on newspapers.
Well, you have to cut it off you have to cut it off somewhere.
No,
You
you don't.
can't. Yeah, you
No,
do.
you
You
don't.
gotta let every. You can't get.
Those
You
teams
can't
were all
give
voted
every.
on.
You can't be given a participation trophy just for being
No,
there.
it's
Be
not
like,
a
oh look, we're the number
participation
42
trophy. It's
team in the
no,
country.
it's no less of a participation trophy being number 38 than it is being number 25. What's the difference between the two?
No, because if you're number 25 and talking about the number 38 team, you have earned more in your season. For example.
No. You are being perceived by the voters. You haven't necessarily earned more. I can go through every top 25, final AP top 25, and give you 5, 6, 8 teams that have just as much justification to be in that final top 25 as the final 5 or 6 teams in that ranking. I can do it every year. It's not difficult to do. Just to finish my point, those others receiving votes, the same process that was used to determine those first 25 teams is the same process that was used to give them those votes from 25 to whatever it lands to that week, 38, 39, 40, 41. And actually, this past week, there are only 9 points separating 25 and 26, and there are 30 points separating 24 and 25. So it's an idiotic measurement of just random sports writers just selecting whomever they think. And some of them do it, I'm sure, very well. Others I know do a very poor job at it, but they are still given that opportunity. Just like Heisman voters, there are tons of Heisman voters who have no idea what they're doing.
I'll agree with that. You won't find a whole lot of pushback from me on the Heisman front. On the top 25 thing, just to kind of wrap this up, and then we can wrap thoughts on Oregon and Washington here. We as college football fans have to understand what a ranking means. Like being number 25, it doesn't do a heck of a lot for you. And everyone understands that in the grand perception of things. Take Louisville, for instance, okay? Under the radar team this year. They start the year 5-0. They cracked the top 25. But did it mean a lot for them to be at, where were they a week ago? At number 25? Not really, no. Does it mean something to be at number 14? It does. And they had to earn their way to that spot because their schedule had been pretty weak at that point. But they play a good Notre Dame team. They house them, and they get moved up accordingly. I don't think you can create a perfect system to determine rankings, no, whether that's the BCS, the College Football Playoff, or the Absolutely. AP voters. You can always poke holes in it. But if you were to survey the college football landscape of people who are actually informed on the matter and who are actually going to be honest with their votes and who actually watch a lot of teams play and see the caliber of competition they're going up against, the bulk of the top 25 would be correct on a weekly basis.
Correct based on whose evaluation? That the term you just
no, like that hypothetical group of people. If you pooled together,
yes,
everybody,
yes,
who covers the sport, let's say everyone at the Locked On Network. We have our own top 25 that I vote on every week, by the way. People like you who cover the sport and who watch the sport religiously. A lot of AP voters as well. Heck, you could maybe even put coaches in there, but they're so distracted. I put more value on the AP poll than the coaches poll, to be honest with you. So if you pulled together all those people and didn't have it be so restricted, like if you expanded the field of people who were deciding, hey, this is a top 25 team, this is not a top 25 team, this is number 8, this team's number 18, this is number 19, and you averaged it out, the bulk of that top 25 that would get generated if you put more people into the mix who are informed enough to vote on the sport, the bulk of the top 25 would remain largely unchanged and not impactful.
You believe. And I'm not arguing with that because I don't know.
No,
I don't think
that's what I believe. But like I look at the top 25 right now and I see Miami is number 25 with 74 points and Missouri is just outside of it with 69 points. So I get that.
So Missouri could be 25.
Right. Like
so Miami's opponent this week, North Carolina, is playing a ranked team. Missouri's opponent, Kentucky, is not playing a ranked team. And we will have people running around all week talking about, well, they're playing a ranked team. They're not playing a ranked team when in fact, who knows who should be ranked and who should not.
But here's the other thing is with midseason rankings, if people have qualms about them, they just about always work themselves out by the end. Because there are going to be more results and rankings are going to change. And by the end of the year, like mid-season rankings, sure, they can be pretty darn fluid. But by the end of the year, the rankings that actually matter are the teams that could be vying for the college football playoff. And that's really the top 10 to 12 who are going for those 4 spots, which is what you need to get right. And everything after that, like there are always going to be disagreements and varying opinions and thoughts and all that sort of stuff.
Sure. What the playoff committee does is a completely different deal. And that's what really matters. I'm just saying at the end of each season, I can typically take 5 or 6 teams outside the final top 25 and make a very valid case to them being placed in the top 25.
Sure. Yeah, you can probably do that.
But what's on the coach's record or what's being talked about when teams are and guys like us are adding up, okay, how many times did Mark Stoops
If you're
finish ranked?
here's the thing, if you're operating on that sort of margin though, the conversation is not nationally relevant. If you're
No,
operating on a
I,
margin
I,
of, well, we should have been ranked inside, we should have been number 23 and we were just outside of it. Like you can have that gripe, but it's not altering the college football landscape.
no, it's not doing that. And I'm not saying it's ridiculous to the point that if a team's ranked a number 7 at the final poll, yeah, it's not so crazy that I obviously know that that is a really good football team. The last 2 points I'll make on the matter would be part of this comes from my experience covering the SEC for 7 years and being at all the news conferences on the sideline in the press box every week, all the interview, everything, and and talking to AP voters, AP writers every week and watching them work. And what I observed was they are so hyper focused as they should be. They do a good job by and large, I'm sure, do an excellent job. They're focused on the team that they are covering. They need to know who the third string left guard is. They need to know every injury, everything that happens. They don't know what's going on past that. Generally, I'm sure some of them do their due diligence outside, but they are working hard covering Ole Miss or Kansas State. That what's going on? Do they know who Jaden Delora is? I I
Yeah,
bet
no,
most of
a
them
lot, yeah,
don't.
no, a lot of them probably. I mean, West Coast football has had the exposure problem for quite a long time, which is part of how we've gotten ourselves in this situation. But again, that's a conversation for another day. Hey, I hate to be that guy, but
Yes.
I gotta
Okay.
bounce. So, is there anything
Gotcha.
else on
No,
Oregon and
no, we are
Washington you
good.
wanted to ask me about?
No, we are good, Spencer. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah,
Locked
of
on
course.
Ducks, locked on Pac-12. Thanks, Spencer.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.